Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Mike Haynes Recruitment Show, where, as you can see, we're going to be talking about VOTC and how to differentiate yourselves and boost revenues using that. Now, we've got a special guest today who's going to help explain how implementing a VOTC program has achieved these things. But before then, I'm going to introduce my co-host, obviously. It's Big Mike. How you doing today, Big Mike?
Well, pretty good actually. I can't remember. I've had my holidays since the last show or before. I can't recall now, really.
I think you were on the last show.
I was, yeah. Well, just come back from a fantastic weekend away in the Cotswolds. If you're interested, the Dormy Hotel. Brilliant. Next door to Broadway Golf. We played the golf and then went to the hotel. But I've done the Cotswolds now. Done all that. Drove around, saw all the stuff, done it. Don't need to go back. So really, really good and ready for action, as it were.
Well, that's what we want. So today, Mike, as we said, we're talking about VOTC. So can we first just make sure everyone's singing from the same hymn sheet? We're all talking about the same stuff. Can you tell me not only sort of what a VOTC actually is, but why we're spending the time talking about it?
Okay, so VOTC stands for Voice of the Customer. So it's giving your external stakeholders an opportunity to criticize what you do and how you do it. That's essentially it. And everything is geared towards that. So with a lot of feedback tends to be done on forms, which is fine. It's a good place to start, actually. But to get people to fill a form in like 3 minutes, above 3 minutes, and people are starting to think, oh, I'll do that later, or I can't be asked with that. So you're only going to gather certain types of information. Because it's a form, obviously, there's no chance to dig in a little deeper or kind of explore a topic or an answer that someone gives. With VOTC, level 1 is that, which you can do for everyone, your placeables, your candidates, your contractors, your interns, whatever, and your customers, your clients. But you can also do it via telephone, and you would reserve that for your clients, and that's a much bigger deal. And the thing that Gemma's going to talk about today is that kind of the outreach. And as I said, it's so different to traditional feedback, which is slim and short and really aimed for the marketers to be able to say 93% of our clients gave us a 5-star review. Well, so what? I mean, it's useful, I suppose, but what you really want to know is how to be better this week than you were last week, and how to be better next week than you are this week. And that's what VOTC does. And because we're going to dig into it deeply and explain how, and the reason I wanted Gemma to come on the show is that she's been running a VOTC program at her firm for I think about 3-4 months now, started to see a few of the benefits creeping in, learned a lot from it. And I wanted her to come and really share that knowledge and experience with the team. And she's got lots of valuable insights that you can take away. One last thing before we do, the benefit, many benefits. Ultimately, you will make more money when you do it. You will, because that's what happens. But you can get ways to improve your service, a product, make it better than the competition. You can find out what the clients are up to. You can understand how parts of your business have changed. They got better or worse over time, and you can either fix it or celebrate it and roll it out to other places. Massive benefits from it. And again, we'll be digging into some of those later.
And in a market like this one, where people are aggressively going to be going for your clients because there's just less work, making this a priority is something that's going to be huge, I think.
As you're watching this show, people are ringing up and emailing your clients. Because you're doing
don't go anywhere, stay watching.
Oh yeah, stay watch. Don't go. They won't be if you watch this show. There you go.
Yeah. So without any further ado, Mike, shall we bring in Gemma? Hi, Gemma.
Hello. Good to be here.
There you are. Thank you very much. So Gemma, as a way of introduction, is the Group Marketing Director for FMC Talent. FMC Talent, we've done work with over the years, and they are, I would say, a very switched on and professional rec and search firm in the tech space, and I really like working with them. So thank you very much for coming on the show today, Gemma.
Thank you. Yeah. I've
Could
been.
you tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe, and the company, if you want to, just share with the audience a little bit of background?
Yeah, so I myself have been in recruitment for 13 years or 14 years
Wow.
actually it might be now. FMC where I work have been around for about 36, 37 years now, so for quite some time. We work across three main sectors, so we work across smart tech, meditech, and also motorsports. So quite large techie based markets. We've been around for a while. We work mainly in exec search, but also a bit contingent as well. So we're right across it. And
I'd forgotten that you did the motorsports. I'd quite forgotten that, actually. It's an interesting little side thing going on there, isn't it?
yes, people are always interested in hearing a bit about what we do in that market.
It's like worth having it just so you can start a conversation with people, isn't it? I think probably.
Yeah, it is. It
Okay.
is. So, but the other markets are equally as interesting. The other
I'm
markets.
sure they are. Well, my background is tech, and I could talk about tech all day long, really. But now, interestingly, you've been running this program for 3 or 4 months or whatever. So early days yet to see a lot of the longer term benefits come through. But could you share with us kind of how you tackle this, what you did? And obviously the other question is, why is the marketing director doing these feedback calls? What's all that about? So if you could talk us through that as well, and then we'll perhaps a little later look at some of the benefits.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, we've always been client-led. We would always say we're sort of client-led. But really interestingly, we had never actually gone through the exercise of directly speaking to our clients in this way. We've always sent out electronic feedback forms. But we were mostly always just getting 5 stars, amazing, you're brilliant. And we're like, at first it's like, yay, but after a few years, you're sort of like, we can't all, it can't all be sunshine and fireworks and roses. So we knew from looking at our client retention stats that we were losing a certain amount of clients each year, even though we were obviously gaining and doing okay, we were losing some. So you have to ask the question of what's going on there. So that's kind of where it started. And although it's only been 3 or 4 months, we've seen some instant benefits in the way of actually reigniting some accounts that are actually teetering on the edge of being lost. And we're seeing some benefits that are starting to go into that longer term pot of benefits for us. So but the reason why we're doing it in marketing, so I have a team, lucky enough to have a marketing team that have the resource to do it, first of all. But really, the most important reason is that it should not be the people who are directly involved in the account asking what other people think about them and their service, because you often just find, and that's the mistake we were making with electronic surveys. At first, they were going out from the people who they were directly dealing with. So you naturally, especially British people, although we work around the globe, want to be polite and only ever say nice things back to the person you've built that relationship with. So they're much more likely to be honest with an external, unbiased party, and we're much more likely to ask the questions that need to be asked. The structured questions to get the response that we need. So,
and I think, well, just on that, it's an interesting point is that you haven't got an axe to grind. Obviously, you're an FMC person and have been there for quite some time, so you have some, a lot of loyalty to the firm. But if someone criticizes the way in which one of your delivery people has done something, well, so be it. I don't know whether he did or whether he didn't say that or do that, because I'm in marketing, but tell me anyway, tell me more. And I think curiosity is a really strong characteristic for successful VOTC. It's like, I really want to know. I may or may not agree with what you've said, but I really want to know what you're thinking there and why you're thinking it. I'll take that on board. And I know you're very good at that, because we did some training on that early on with you. And I think that that's a really strong point. Would you agree with that curiosity piece?
Yeah. I think the way you ask the questions is so important. I think that's what we've learned, is really asking open questions and making it sound like making sure you show how curious you actually are. Like, I really want to know. I really want to get into this. I don't want it to just be, tell us how great we are, or or just tell us what you think, because you're not going to get to the root of it. So we continue to refine our questions and how we ask them and things like that, and I think that's really important to continually improve it. But yeah, I think you've got to make them think that you want to listen, and we do want to listen, especially in marketing. Our job is to protect the brand almost. We want to know those things. So
you say that, but to me this is a no-brainer, right? If you're a solopreneur, you can do the forms and make one phone call a month. Okay, you're the solopreneur, so you're the delivery person, but you can still do it, and it's still better than doing nothing, right? If there are 2 or 3 in the firm, then you do each other's, right? You're still not as good as having someone who's got no axe to grind at all, but you can do it. The benefits are significant. It doesn't cost any money. It costs very little time, and it's relatively easy to do. And yet we struggle to convince people to do it. And I think it's because they don't want to get bad news. That's why I think it is.
Human egos are very fragile little things, aren't they? But I think you can get past that when you realise just truly what you get from a VOTC. And I think
Kirsty does mine for me, I have to leave the room. I can't be in the room because I hate it.
We love it.
Because when Pete does it, you did some training with Pete, didn't you?
Yeah, he's brilliant.
So when you watch him do it, he's actively encouraging people to criticize me. It's like the merest hint that I might not be perfect, which I know is a surprise to everybody. That's a bit awkward.
Oh, yes. Yes.
No, but he's straight in. Oh, what do you mean? Oh, that's interesting. Are you saying he does this or does that? And he's not putting words in their mouth, but he's basically giving them permission to criticize, because most people don't want to do that, really. Which is why if you use a form, you're going to get between 5 and 15% return rates. And in the modern era, they reckon it's much closer to the 5% filled in forms than the 15%. And most of those people like you. They're delighted to write back and say, oh yes, 5 stars out of 5. Very few people will kind of hammer away saying, you terrible service and you should do something. People just don't. This can't be asked. They check out and I don't care. And so
I think what is a lot of times people just, like Gemma, you said, originally we're just getting the 5 stars. I mean, I remember going to a German car manufacturer for a service where I owned my vehicle. And at the end, after they did the service, they went, oh, you're going to get an email through. If you could just give us 5 stars for it all, because otherwise we fail.
Oh.
What? I mean, first of all, no. Second of all, what's the point of it then? Because it's not a real data set. So it's just nonsense. You're not going to improve. And there's a lot they can do to improve their service, BMW. I just said it out loud.
Oh, Kirsty, you've said it now, haven't you?
Oops. I think in recruitment, I think there's a few I think anyway, in my opinion, there's a few reasons why people don't do it. One of them, I think it's quite easy to be passive with things. I also think if you're getting new clients in all the time, you're filling your gap of clients you've lost. And I think so sometimes it's like it may not. It's so easy to hide the issue almost, because you're continually, if you're sort of steadily performing, because you're continually getting new logo acquisition coming through the door, then it's easy to overlook the customer retention. And I think in recruitment, there just seems to be a lack of that customer success, that management of client care and all of that sort of stuff.
Well,
that exists.
I know why that is.
Generally.
I know why that is, because I agree with that. I agree with everything you just said, right? 100%. And like last week's show was on client care. And I would say in all the shows we've done this year, it's been the most important. And yet it was not very well attended at all. We knew it wouldn't be, because we know people aren't interested in it. It's not very sexy. And they think that if they're doing account management, they're doing client care, which of course they're completely separate. And if you haven't watched that show and want to know what real client care is, it's just above or below this one on the My Accounts Recruitment show on LinkedIn. In any event, I think you're right. BD is more sexy. I think if you're winning clients, it covers it up. There is a thing of not wanting to really know what people think. But the other thing is, we came through 2010 to 2023, the golden age of recruitment, where you could just be average and be okay. You could just be an average recruiter and work would come and you would make money. Those days are gone now. Those days are gone, and what you must do is protect your client estate.
Mhm.
You must protect it. You must understand what it wants from you, what you're doing right and what you're doing badly, and then you must act upon that information, because if you don't, you will lose clients. They will go. They probably won't ring you up and say, we're finishing work with you now. They'll probably just start giving vacancies to other agencies, is what they'll do. That's what everyone does.
Yeah,
So
I agree.
that's where
And the thing that we know is that it costs more to acquire a new customer than it does to retain one. And I think, it's easy to forget that. And yeah, having that at the forefront of mind.
Especially in this day and age where it's harder and harder to win clients. You have to work so much harder to win high value clients anyway. I mean, I think you can get vacancies still, but to really win the high value clients is bloody hard work. And to win it, and then perhaps just say, oh, well, we've got that now, let's press on and get the next one, just makes no sense to me. But anyway.
Okay. All right, Mike. So I think now is a good time. I can see people watching this thinking, how exactly am I supposed to run a VOTC? You told us kind of what not to do, which is just send out and ask for 5 stars. BMW. But now let's look at how to run a VOTC program. We've broken this down into sort of 4 major steps, haven't we, Mike?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll go through the theory, and then Gemma's going to come in and talk about the reality of it, since she's been doing it, for these last few months. Before I've got the 4 steps. Before that, I think you have to commit to start off somewhere. If you do an electronic form, SurveyMonkey or Survey Hero, which is what we use, then you've got to think about moving up to the telephone calls. If you don't do anything, I'd just start with an online survey. That's what I would start with, right? With your placeables, your candidates, your contractors, your interims, whatever you place, and also with your clients. Okay. So step number 1 is you have to figure out what it is that you want to know. And that's an important thing, because if you were to write down every touch point, because that's where you start, where you touch the client, either in terms of a phone call or an email or a form or CVs or anything really at all, where you touch the client, you must test that. Is it what the client wants, right? So that's your starting point. There's just like loads of them. You couldn't possibly cover all of those in one call. So my advice is to imagine a big dark room, and you've got a torch. You can only shine the torch at certain places, leave it there for a bit, and then shine it somewhere else. So you're basically going to go through everything that you want, but over a series of calls. Don't just try and cram it all into a call, because as you'll see, the calls kind of 30 minutes, 45 minutes. There's only so much you can cover in that time, really. So I think the first thing, step 1, is what do you want to know about? Which do you think the weakest part of your business is? Start there. Gemma, how did you tackle that?
Yeah, so we started from a position where we already had the electronic survey in place. So that was
Great start.
Yeah, that was helpful in that we could see what had been coming out of there. But we looked at the stats of what was going on that we already knew about clients that we were losing or that were lapsing or for whatever reason, and we looked at what we already know. So what do we already know about what's been going on, and then we used that to start to structure the questions and look at what we might want to ask. And I think the structure of the questions is so key, because making sure you ask things in the right way is so important, and also making sure that it's not us. You don't want to be looking like you're trying to sell or looking like you're trying to get something from them that is any way about generating revenue. It's about getting their feedback. So yeah, really thinking about how we structured those, but start with what do you know already, and then use that to start to follow
I think that's good advice. We have a set of 5 questions, which are generic starter questions that you can begin with and then build out from there. But if you also do them per consultant, you can make some of the questions relate to that consultant, because obviously consultants are different and you're going to get different answers according to who they deal with, which is really useful feedback to go into appraisal systems, by the way. It's like really cool if you do that, because it's coming from the client. So that's what the client says, don't shoot the messenger. And I do think it's quite useful to be able to do that. So
Mike, on that, Mike, how many questions are you supposed to be asking? Because you could go in. Are you going in with 5? Are you going in with 15? Like, how many questions are you reasonably going in with?
We've been doing this for a long time now, and there are a lot of dependencies. So it depends on who's asking the questions that you're asking, how much discussion there'll be around those questions, obviously, right? And it does vary. But for us, we have an opening question where we just ask about what we do well. And the reason we do that up front is because people like to answer that. They like it. They like to say, oh, well, you know, you do really well at this. We really like the way you do that or the other. And of course, if they've got nothing to say, you already know you're in trouble, right, before the call starts. And then we would normally have 5 questions, direct questions. Well, 5 questions about specific areas of the business that we're interested in. And then at the end, you can ask other questions. So my favorite section is the what if question. Well, what if we did this? If we did this on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being you're not interested, 10 being you'd think it was a great idea, what do you think? And it's a great way to test out potential changes to your service or product line without having to actually do them first. So that would be, you might have a couple of things in there. And then there's usually in any other section at the end, it's like, well, is there anything else you want to say to us? You know, that sometimes people say things, sometimes they don't. But I'd be interested, because there's no right or wrong, by the way, on this. This is what we get people to start with, and then they create their own version of it. So what do you put in yours, Gemma? How do you structure the questions?
Yeah, so we have similar, so some opening questions, and then maybe like I think it's 5 or 6 core questions, and then we stole your idea of the what ifs. And I think we have a different set of questions whether we're talking to a hiring leader versus a HR talent leader
Yeah.
or individual. So we do have different sets of questions, and then what we tend to do is prior to the call, we have our standard questions. We'll look at the case, like the situation with that client, and we might make some adjustments pre the call. But I do think there needs to be flexibility. So we have those core sections, the sort of intro questions to kind of break the ice, and then the 5 core questions. But sometimes there needs to be flexibility. I mean, we found, for example, a call can be going really, really well. And we have like a traffic light system we use now for our calls, like green, amber, red. And you could be on a green call, it's going really well. But actually you unearth that it's going really well, but they've pigeonholed us into a certain service or certain type of thing that we deliver. So although they're really happy with that, the what if questions are so good at actually then being able to say, well, we actually, you might not know this, but we do this, or what if we offered this, or whatever like that. That's quite good to put that in there, but again, it's careful phrasing of that so that it doesn't come
So it doesn't
across
look
as
like sales, yeah.
we're selling. But yeah, that's quite an interesting. So even when it's going really well, making sure that you have flexibility in the
I
questions
think
as
that's
well.
true, because the other thing as well, I hope you agree
That's
with
point,
it.
Mike. Then we've got to move on.
Okay, you're only looking for, 2 or 3 interesting ideas a call. I mean, 1 is a result. So it's not like you have to have all these questions and have 10 suggestions for each question. That's not how it works. So the questions are really there as a framework, aren't they, to get you into the conversation and hopefully to talk about the things that need to be talked about because they're not what the client wants. That's what we've said with the framework.
All right. Okay. So we figured out what it is that we want to know. We want to figure out, we want to shine that torch on a specific area, and we want to do it kind of semi-regularly with the clients. Next question is, who am I asking? You know, because Gemma, you kind of alluded to 2 different types of people, but then am I going for my really good clients? Am I going for the clients I haven't worked with in a while? Who am I going for?
I'm going to flip this round and ask Gemma to come in first on this one, if that's okay, and then I'll look at the theory afterwards.
Yeah, so we decided we wanted to have a workflow. So we decided to create a process for it so that we could work out how to capture the right people. I think if you've got less client, it depends on your volume of clients, but for us, we needed to have a system. So we actually have 2 things we look at. So we use the electronic feedback as a sort of springboard. So if somebody fills that in positively, neutral, or negative, whatever they fill it in, they get prioritized and they get put into the system. Well, could you expand on that? We'd love to talk to you, etc., etc. And then we have another group, which is basically people who haven't given us a new job for 12 months. that we also prioritize, and then everybody else gets mopped up at some point as part of the process. So it's sort of like we have priority groups that we make sure that we are tackling and doing as the moment arises. So as a client starts to lapse, they get picked up. As somebody fills in the survey, they get picked up. But then everybody else gets mopped up routinely. Every 6 months, we just try and contact them and get them on a VOTC call. So that's our way of covering all the bases, but having a way of prioritizing and a system.
It's very structured, isn't it? I really like that. I mean,
Yeah,
I know you're obviously a reasonably sized firm. So, and by the way, if you're thinking, well, I couldn't do that, I'm not as big as FMC, it doesn't matter. You can do this. We've got one-man bands that do it. So please don't be put off by that. I know Kirsty wants to move on to the next question, so I'll be very quick on this. But I would say that there's a decision maker class, those people that make the decisions as to whether you get the vacancies or whether you don't. And there's a hiring manager class. Sometimes they're the same person, sometimes they're different people. Whoever has a stake in your success on that client site should have the opportunity to speak. Now, if you ABC your clients, which is what we talked about in the last show, it means that the A client should have at least one VOTC call a year if they're prepared to do it, preferably two. They're the A clients. B's, they should have one. C's, you can just get away with, if I've got time, I'll do it, or otherwise it's just going to be an electronic form. So to give you some kind of structure. I mean, the mere fact that you send a form out and offer to do a call, whether they take you up on it or not, communicates the key message that you are serious about excellence. And that's a really important message. Excellence actually means something here. We really want to be better than everybody else, and we need you to tell us how to do it. Right? It's a key message.
Okay, I have one final question on this before we move on, which is, let's say I rang ABC Limited, my client, about CV, how I submit the CVs, right? Just for instance, that's the torch that I'm shining on. Do I then go to 6 or 7 other clients and ask all of them about CV submission, or do I mix it up depending on what client I'm talking to? How does it work?
You can do either, right? So if you think that function in your delivery or fulfillment part of the business is not as strong as it could be because the conversion ratios are telling you that there's a problem here, then I would do the same question across the board, because you need to understand why that part of your business isn't working as well as it could. If there's no clear problem with that, with the business that you have, but you're not doing as well with a client as you want, then you've got to go fishing. You've got to try and figure out what the problem is, and they're not always forthcoming in telling you, oh, I'm glad you rang me because I need to talk about this. It's not often. You have to dig and prod and poke until you get to a bit like your brother Thomas, when he was younger.
Mm-hmm.
If there was a problem with him, he wouldn't say anything. He just might have his face, and then you'd talk about loads of things. Then you'd mention the thing that it was, and he'd burst into tears. Got it now. Got it. I know what it is, right? And it's kind of like that. You touch the nerves until you hit one, and you go, oh, there you go. And then you can go deeper and understand what the problem is. So it depends what you're trying to do. Would you add anything to that, Gemma?
Yeah, I agree. And the only thing I will add actually is if you're working with quite large teams in your clients, like multiple people, we've actually done it so that we strategically speak to all of them, but in a way that in an order that makes sense. And that's quite good as well, because actually you can find even in one client, there can be people that have completely different views of you. Yeah. So I would also say thinking about that when you're looking at the who and plan it out. So, it is it is a little bit thinking strategically as well about how you approach it and who you're approaching.
I think there's a lot of truth in that. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're on to the third step. So we figured out what we want to know. We figured out who we want to ask. And now we have already touched on this at the beginning. So I know this is going to be quite a quick summary, Mike, but who do you get to run the call?
Yeah, okay. We have talked about this. I know there's other things we want to cover before the end of the show. If you have a marketing person, whether they're fully employed, as Gemma is, or whether they're part-time, or whether they're an external marketing person who you just hire to do marketing for you, if you can persuade them to do it, it's so much the better, because they're going to get access to the people that they're producing content for and that they're producing communiques for. And so they can use that time as well to get information for themselves, which will make their content and their communications better. Plus, they're not part of the delivery function. So you like, really. I'm just interested in understanding what you've got to say. And plus, they tend, marketing people, this is a broad brush now, Gemma, so please don't grimace when I say it. They tend to be quite good with people. You know, they tend to be kind of
Inquisitive.
open and talkative people. Yeah, they tend to be. I know I have seen some marketers who aren't that, but as a race, as a collection of people, I think you're pretty good actually for that kind of thing. So 3 big ticks in boxes for that. If you're on your own, then you either have to do your own, or maybe if you know another recruiter, you can do theirs and they can do yours. You can do it that way around. If you've got a little team, then you all do each other's clients. So there's options. You know, there's things you can do. We do it if there are any clients watching. We do it, but only for clients. So we don't sell it as an external service. But if you're a client and you'd like us to do them for you, then we will.
Yeah.
You know, so whatever.
Okay. All right. So I know we've covered that before, so I'm going to move on. So the next big question is, and Gemma, I'm sure you're going to have a lot on this, because I've done this call and I may have done multiple on the same topic, or I've multiple within the same organization. I have all of this feedback. I'm taking a lot of notes. I'm noting things down. What am I supposed to do with all of this information that I've got now at the end of the call?
Well, again, I'd like to reverse this. I'd like Gemma to answer first, and then I'll come in at the end, just say a few bits and bobs, if that's okay.
Yeah, so if you can record the calls, it's just a practical point, and transcript, because that's always really helpful. So then you can be actively listening during the call. We have a summary document that we use to capture the feedback in like a standard format, which is really helpful. And then what we've been working quite a lot on is the group of people that are the recipients and who that is. So obviously we're a fair size, so we've often got the individual involved, a line manager, maybe a team director and things like that. So that's important to kind of look at. If, for example, there is some criticism in there, am I going to send that straight to the person, like word for word? How am I going to broach that? Maybe yes, and sometimes that's just been yes, we will send that direct. But sometimes it needs a little bit more thinking about. So it needs to be digestible in terms of the summary, but if you can get in the transcripts and stuff, it's really helpful. And then it's about making sure that something is done with it. And that's even if it's a really good call. Like I said, I think sometimes the good calls still have insight in them that show that we could be expanding on that account further than we are. So we're working quite hard on having a team of people that are always involved. So there's a constant of kind of almost customer success people, whatever you want to call it, that are there, and making sure that these things are happening. But having a standard set of process. So we're trying to develop, if it's a red, amber or green, a different set of responses, but there is a response, and we make sure, like even simple things like thanking them for their time, so yeah, right through to how we manage a difficult situation. So again, it is quite structured. We like to keep things quite structured, but I think that is important with this, because you could easily find it just goes into a black hole, or you can find that something is initially done about it. So there's an initial response, but there's not a long-term response. So that's the other thing, is just making sure it's in a structured way that we can keep checking that something's going on with that. And then that's kind of important as well, that the person doing the call, when their responsibility ends and when somebody else's starts, because I think we had a bit of a teething problem, which it almost felt like it was our job to now make the change, but it's like, well, I've done my bit now. It needs to have the impact from the people involved.
Yeah. I mean, essentially, you need a change control process, basically.
Yeah.
So any comment that comes back is probably going to fall into one of 3 categories. We need to do something about this now. We can't wait. There's a problem. It needs to be sorted, and you need to escalate that. I mean, obviously, if you're a small business, you'll just deal with it because it's you that's going to deal with it. If some of the things are suggestions and you think that sounds like a good idea, maybe a change to the business or the way in which you do things, that sounds interesting. I'm not going to make a decision on it now, but I really like the idea of that. just pop it in a little spreadsheet and put the details in, a link, as you say, to the recording or to the transcript, so you can go and kind of expand your knowledge of it when you come to look at it again. And then I recommend every 2 or 3 months you have a change control meeting. If there's only one of you, you just sit there and look at all the ideas and decide what you can do and what you can't do, what you want to do, what you have the capacity for, and then just make sure those changes happen to your business. That's the best way to look at it. And then the third group of things is just, we're not going to do that. It's just, for whatever reason, we don't want to do it, or we can't do it. You know, a lot of suggestions come back are like that. It'd be great if we could, but we can't, you know. So but that middle group of suggestions that you think, yeah, that's a good idea, you can't do everything. So to batch it up for, say, 2 months or 3 months even, and then look at everything at one go, you can then think, well, okay, that's a good idea, I'll do that. Maybe that one we'll leave, do another time, or this one we just won't do it. And I think that's really important to have a change control process in place. So thank you for that.
Okay, all right. So you've got that main process of the 4 steps. Now, I have 2 questions. What's one topic, but 2 questions within it. So we mentioned you can potentially use a VOTC to win more sales pitches, right? So there's 2 questions I have. One is, during a VOTC, and I've done a couple myself, sometimes it becomes apparent that there is an opportunity for work, right? And as Gemma has mentioned on numerous occasions, you cannot sell during these VOTCs. So my question number 1 is, how am I supposed to handle it when it's very clear that a sales opportunity is there within a VOTC call? How do I handle that without breaking the rules? And secondly, how am I supposed to use it to win brand new clients?
Again, Gemma, would you mind tackling the first of those? You know, you must have had instances where it became obvious there was some work kicking around. How did you deal with that?
I think, to be honest, it's quite simple. It's just going, it's saying, okay, great, you know, thank you for that, you know, whatever the point might be. And then maybe if there is a way of asking them to expand on it, but not in a way that is going, what's that there? Is there, there's a job? But like more like, you know, oh, could you just expand on that point a little bit and then move on? Or it might be more appropriate just to move through to the next question. But obviously we do capture that. We capture what they've said. And we've had some really specific, we've had some people basically tell us in the call what we need to do really specifically to grow that account, because for whatever reason they really like us, but it's not working. And they've got, listen, you need to have lunch with this person, you need to meet this one for golf, you need to go down here with this person, you need to, you know, schmooze this person, and you need to do this and the other, and really specific things. And you know, that's great, but we still need to maintain our position in that call of just being open and moving on with the questions, expanding if we can, but nothing around selling it.
I think it's amazing.
Can we book that meeting in next week then?
Yeah, there is that. I mean, what we always tell people to do is, if you're not doing your own, if you're doing your own, you can tackle it. You can say, well, that's great, I don't want to take the vacancy now, but maybe at the end we can come back to that at the end of the call. I want to finish this and come back to it. I'm delighted to take the vacancy and work on it. If you're doing it for someone else, or someone else in your business is doing it for you, then you can say, right, I'll get so-and-so to give you a call instantly and take those details down for you and start work on that vacancy. So you can push it to the account management side of client care, as opposed to confusing people with this, because it's one of the biggest bear traps is you slip into selling, and it's just so dangerous really to do that, because it's going to weaken the strength of what you're trying to achieve here, which is get proper feedback, you know. But I'll tell you the other thing as well, just interesting on that, is that you touched upon it. Every time I used to do them for my clients, so I've done loads and loads over the years, and every single call, it was like, you know, sometimes you can get those tins in the cheap stores where they've got no labels on, no idea what's inside it. You take it home and you open it up and it's a tin of peaches, or it's a tin of baked beans or something, right? But it's kind of like that. Every time you pick up the phone to make a call, you've got no idea what's going to happen, no idea what you're going to get back, but what you can guarantee, it'll be useful. And I mean, I've never had anyone tell me that, go and play golf with someone, because damn, if that was the case, I'd be straight out there. Well, which course do you want to play at? But I think it's like that, isn't it? You just don't know what's going to come. It's just brilliant.
Yeah,
Look,
even the ones that are, we've had ones that have directly led to resurgence of accounts that are lapsing and have instantly giving us revenue because of the voice of the customer call. We've had middle of the road where we've actually identified steps we needed to take. We've also ones led to an internal referral that led to a job. We've had loads of results, but even the ones that don't lead to something direct like that have still been super useful from an insight trend perspective, whatever it might be, even for marketing, for content, whatever it might be. So there's the full spectrum of usefulness.
Amazing. Okay, and then Mike, that second part of the question: can I use a VOTC to win a brand new client that I don't currently have a relationship with?
yeah, I think the big thing is if you're going for formal pitches, then obviously not everybody will want to know this, but some increasingly clients want to know what your quality control procedures are, or how you're going to deal with issues, escalation points, and what have you. A lot of people are very wishy-washy about that because they don't have anything to say really. Well, you'd ring up the MD or whatever it would be. But to actually say, oh no, we have a VOTC program, let me just run you through what that means. It's 2 levels, so everybody gets a form to fill in, and then certain people we will drill down on and ask if they'd be prepared to take a phone call from us. And we're actively encouraging people to criticize us. We're not interested in 5 stars, we really want to know how we can get better. That makes you stand out. It makes you stand out for all the right reasons. It sends the message that we are serious about excellence, and it sends the message that we want to know what you think. So, and I've actually seen that work on more than one occasion. One of the first clients we did it with, we helped them do it. They got the report back to say no one's ever said that to us. No one's ever put that in a proposal for us. So I think, okay, not everyone's going to be interested in it, but some people will be, and you can tick that box in a big way.
Okay, amazing. Okay, so we have kind of come towards the end of the session. So in a second, Gemma, I'm going to be coming to you and asking about your top tip. But before then, Mike, this is actually the last episode of this season, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we break up today. So we'll be back in September. So we've got 2 months off because in the summer it's crazy anyway. People are on holidays, and we like to take a break as well and refresh and re-energize and repurpose ourselves a little bit. So do you want to bring up what the next show is, Kirsty? So this is already scheduled. It's our friend Walter Doherty. He's coming on the show again, been on before a couple of times, and he's going to be explaining to us how to automate everything. I mean, I think that's a very grand claim there, Walter, but I'm sure if you've made it, you can talk about it. And it's essentially the latest tech that you can use to automate things and make things happen quicker. Save time, save money. Who wouldn't want to attend that? And as you can see, it's on September the 9th. So that show will be posted pretty much after this one. So if you want to, you can go and register for that right now if you want to.
Yeah, exactly. And if anybody can do it, he can. Okay. So we've come to that time of show. Now, people watching this, anytime we do client care, it's never as exciting as automation or BD or anything like that. But the people who are watching this are already a step ahead of the game because a lot of people aren't going to do anything to do with this. But Gemma, let's say somebody's watching this and they're thinking, this VOTC malarkey, you've made a case for it. I like the sound. What would you say is your top tip for people who are thinking of doing it?
I think right at the start, I think whether you are, even if it's just yourself or multiple people or a big business, it's getting buy-in. And even if that's just yourself believing in it, that it could work. And I think there's a couple of ways of doing that. So getting people on board with the idea and the concept, but I would definitely recommend a trial, doing it with a group of clients and seeing how it goes and then reporting back on that, because actually that's the best way to get buy-in. First of all, it's the best way even for yourself to believe in it, in the process, and see what the outcomes could be. So I think sometimes it feels like a big step to start doing it with all clients, but actually start small, do it with a few and see what the results are. So I guess that's my top tip.
Okay. And okay, for me, do I get time for me?
You do.
Yeah. If you're not doing anything, start with an online form. 3 questions, 3 different parts of your business. Always get people to score it out of 10. That's a secret that we didn't mention earlier. Don't just ask for an opinion. Get for someone to score between 1 and 10, because you'll get much more honest answers if you do that. And it's more likely to trigger a discussion if you do that. So just get 3 questions, score out of 10 with an opportunity for them to write something if they really want to, and start to send it to everybody as soon as you finish a project. Or if it's an ongoing relationship where there's vacancies all over the place, every 6 months, just whack it out and say, just want to know what you think about us. That's a great starting point. Do you placeables, your candidates, your contractors, your interims, whatever you place, and do it with your clients. You could do that today. It's done. Doesn't matter how big you are. No cost, no time. No brainer.
Okay, it's a big win. Okay, so we've come to the end of the show and to the end of this season as well. So first of all, I want to say thank you very much to everybody who's watched. Everybody who's watched the whole season and commented. We love you guys. So it's a great opportunity for us to have these people that we care about. I'd like to say a huge thank you to Gemma for being here today and sharing so much and being so open and honest. So thank you very much, Gemma.
Thank you. I enjoyed it. Thank you.
It was a pleasure to have you on board, Gemma. It really was. Because obviously, we can talk about the theory. We can't talk about specifics because we can't sacrifice our clients' confidences. But you could come on and talk about your company, which you do very well today. So really appreciate that.
I am really passionate about it. I think it's so overlooked. So yeah, hopefully,
Massively
even if one person starts doing it, that's great.
Well, we can't understand, and we can never get people to attend. I don't know what the attendance on this is, but it'll be low. I know it will be. It's madness. There's just easy money to be had in this. Anyway, it is what it is. Those people who are watching, as Kirsty said, you've got an advantage. You should use it now.
You should indeed. And I want to say a huge thank you to Mike, of course, not only for his incredible taste in shirts that he's demonstrated through this past season, but also just for being here and being a legend in his own lifetime.
Well, I suppose I have to thank you for probably, doing the hostess with the mostess thing in the Kirsty Ames show. Are we having a new logo in the autumn?
I'm going to try my hardest to get a new logo for next year that says the Kirsty Ames Recruitment Show.
Yeah. Mike in small letters.
Yeah, and he's here too. Yeah.
Thank you very much. It's been great. And I hope you've enjoyed the season as much as we have. As Kirsty said, echo, thank you to all our guests who've been on the show. Thank you to all our listeners and our viewers. And we will be back in the autumn.
We will indeed.